Next person to say they like Super Saiyan 3, I got something for you.
So my last video was about the problem with some of the newer forms in Dragon Ball Super, and I guess this video is a part 2. I've always known what Saiyan forms I've liked and the ones I did not, but I've never put them in order from worst to best. But I think it's important that before we get into it, I lay out my criteria. I think there are 3 aspects that make a good Saiyan transformation in Dragon Ball. The first is a form's introduction. I think that the build up to a form is key along with the first transformation sequence for a given form. The second is the aesthetic. I think the way a form looks is important. And the third is the place within the plot. Essentially, every transformation in Dragon Ball is a power boost that enhances the fighter as a whole. There are very few forms that enhance just strength or just speed, but there are a couple of forms that either don't make a lot of sense within the plot, or their occurrence at that specific point is not very significant. Alright, now with that out of the way, let's get started. So I counted 18 different Saiyan forms in Dragon Ball, and at number 18 is Super Saiyan Blue. Yes, I think Super Saiyan Blue is the worst Saiyan form in all of Dragon Ball. I credit Super Saiyan Blue as the starting point for the problem that we have with the Saiyan forms now. The form's introduction was okay. Goku and Vegeta basically had the same visuals and used the form against the same character in the same fight. As far as the aesthetic, I'll always be a fan of the flowing and less erratic aura that comes with the God forms. But the big issue with Super Saiyan Blue comes in when you question its place in time. I think it happened way too soon after Super Saiyan God, and at the time, it kinda ruined Super Saiyan God and enforced the idea that certain steps could be skipped when it comes to the God forms. In Dragon Ball Z, it seemed that all 4 grades of Super Saiyan had to be reached and then Super Saiyan 2 was achievable. We never saw Super Saiyan God from Vegeta, and with the whole Saiyan Beyond God thing, one of the franchise's better forms was devalued. And the next form is essentially the exact same thing with Super Saiyan Rose. It is the same form as Super Saiyan Blue, but with pink hair. I think no matter how you personally rank Saiyan forms as a whole, these two have to be right next to each other. And the reason I have Rose a little higher than Blue is because its existence doesn't devalue any other forms. Alright, now the next form is one of the newest Saiyan transformations in the series, and that is True Ultra Instinct. I know a lot of people like to group all of the different variations of Ultra Instinct as one thing, but each different form that accompanies the technique of Ultra Instinct has provided Goku with different benefits and drawbacks. And I think the reason Ultra Instinct has become such a weird thing to talk about is because of how the goalpost for the technique continues to move. At first, Ultra Instinct was introduced as a technique from the Angels, and because of how Goku fought in contrast to Vegeta, Ultra Instinct would suit Goku. And from perfecting it in 20 minutes to now having to find his own version of it but still using the perfected version in certain fights, you gotta admit it's convoluted. Plus, I know this may sound childish, but the form doesn't look cool. I'm not a big fan of any of the Ultra Instinct variants. This one just happens to be my least favorite. Next is Gohan Beast. Strong form. Looks pretty cool, but I think we all have to admit that because of how it was introduced, it feels like a cheap remaster of Super Saiyan 2 Teen Gohan. Now that can change as Gohan has more fights with the form, but as of right now, that's how I feel about it. But the reason I have it above forms like Super Saiyan Blue and True Ultra Instinct is because Gohan was due for some kind of big boost in power. For him to be an integral part in the story going forward, that was just necessary. Plus, the last time Gohan got a big boost in power was in the 90s. And speaking of the 90s, the next form here is another form introduced in the 90s and arguably has a top 3 introduction out of all of these forms. And that introduction is what keeps Super Saiyan 3 from the bottom of this list. I've said why I don't like Super Saiyan 3 multiple times before, including my last video. I don't want to take too much time explaining it all over again. Now at number 13 is Super Saiyan Blue Evolution. Another example of a form that is aesthetically pleasing and gave Vegeta a boost in power when he absolutely needed it. He was able to win with the form as well, but Vegeta's inability to use the form again is questionable. I'm not a fan of Saga-specific forms. Because of the stakes that came along with the Tournament of Power, I understand an elevated sense of urgency, but I don't like that Vegeta was kinda just thrown a new shade of Super Saiyan Blue just to get through the tournament. I hope we can agree on that front. Now the next form is the last one in this video where I dislike more about a form than what I like, and that form is Super Saiyan Rage. First off, bad name. Especially because the OG Super Saiyan transformation was about rage. Another issue I have with this form is its place within the plot. Because of how fast Goku and Vegeta could get stronger and Black progressing even quicker than them, Trunks was quickly getting left behind during the Goku Black arc and eventually found himself being a non-factor. So did Trunks need some kind of boost? Yes. but this one is just confusing. The form looks cool, no doubt, but what exactly is going on here? His hair flares out a little more than it normally does as a Super Saiyan. He has this blue lightning like a Super Saiyan 2 or 3, but he has this flowing blue aura like that of a god form. And then you ask yourself, how strong is this form? Because for him to fight Black and Zamasu, you'd assume he's at least god level, and with his aura, it would kind of make sense to assume that. But there's absolutely no way Trunks should be god level. So at the end of the day, it's a really cool looking form, but I think it was a cheap way to make Trunks relevant while still not making a whole lot of sense. At number 11 is Perfected Super Saiyan Blue. I really wish we would have gotten the chance to see this one on screen. The idea of training a form to the point where aura doesn't leak out is similar to the idea of Grade 4 Super Saiyan, and personally, I'm more of a fan of these characters mastering a form first before using a different one. If you've read the manga and watched the anime for Dragon Ball Super, then you know the stories are different, and I made a video explaining why I favor the manga version more, and the manga's way of dealing with transformations is part of the reason why. I still don't like Super Saiyan Blue as a whole, but this was good. Coming in at number 10 is Ultra Instinct Sign. This form's introduction is one of the best moments in the franchise as a whole. I know almost every Dragon Ball fan remembers just how viral this moment was. If I remember correctly, it even crashed Crunchyroll. Man, the music, the way Goku was moving, how he was silent the whole time, and this form's introduction was one of the few moments in that tournament where I was glad to see how everyone else in the tournament felt about Goku's ascension. This form wasn't enough to beat Jiren, but it did allow Goku to beat Kefla and provided us watchers with a nice sense of anticipation, because even though I do think it happened a little too fast, Goku figuring out how to use Ultra Instinct was a wonderful experience if you were watching the series week to week. And it's only right that the next form would be Mastered Ultra Instinct. As a concept, I think the form/technique is perfect. Mastered Ultra Instinct gives Goku white hair and an aura that embodies the angelic combat style that the form brings. Achieving Mastered Ultra Instinct is a significant milestone in Goku's journey. It demonstrates his growth as a fighter and his ability to break through his limits, which was a big storyline during the Tournament of Power. Additionally, the fact that it's a technique that even the Gods of Destruction struggle to master adds to its prestige. I also think that Mastered Ultra Instinct has the potential to solve a long-term problem with Dragon Ball, and that is the need to always be physically stronger than your opponent. Because even now, 6 years later, I still think Jiren was stronger than Ultra Instinct Goku, but Goku's reaction time and movement allowed him to negate Jiren's strength to a degree. Had it not been for some of the other problems the entirety of Ultra Instinct has, this form would be at the very top of this list. Next up is the Great Ape transformation. And I just really like the idea of a Saiyan transforming into a giant ape. The form was also significant in two different contexts. It was a big deal when we thought Goku was just a human with a tail, and it was also significant and made more sense when we figured out Goku was an alien. And then 30 years later, we figured out that the form's power could be channeled without physically becoming an ape. Even going back to Dragon Ball Z, Broly has been a Saiyan mutant whose Super Saiyan transformations have always been a little different. And in Dragon Ball Super's continuity, before coming to Earth, Broly never was pushed to become a Super Saiyan and fight. So in his encounter with Goku and Vegeta, he quickly progresses in terms of strength, starting with his Wrath form and then the legendary Super Saiyan form. I've always rocked with this form just being an uncontrollable machine that kept getting stronger. In both Dragon Ball Z and Super, I think the form's aesthetic and place within the story were always big positives. And just like that, we're at the top 5. And at number 5 is Ultra Ego. The form looks crazy, but it makes sense. The form's power is crazy, but it makes sense. And its timing in the story is perfect because it was introduced as Goku was getting further along in his growth down the Angel's way of getting stronger, and with Vegeta being such a different kind of fighter than Goku, he needed something to contrast that. Yes, the form is heavily relying upon the power of destruction, but the whole concept of taking damage and getting stronger is such a Saiyan attribute. Yet with saying that, I really hope that we don't see any other Saiyan use this form. It is perfect for Vegeta and Vegeta alone. Now for the Mount Rushmore of Saiyan transformations. At number 4, I have the coolest looking Saiyan form, a form that we all love even though it is not canon, and that is Super Saiyan 4. This form is so good, I know that most of us wish it could make its way into Dragon Ball Super, which I think it could, but that's another topic for another day. This form is weird. It looks so different from every other Saiyan form, but it makes sense. I love how unique it is. I love how it incorporates the most basic Saiyan transformation. I like how the eye color changes depending on who uses the form. From an aesthetic standpoint, Super Saiyan 4 is number 1. But like I said in the beginning, there's a little more to it when it comes to ranking these forms for me. So at number 3 is Super Saiyan 2. This form was a perfect climax to what I think was the perfect progression of power for a Saiyan. Its introduction was top-notch, its place within the story can't be questioned, and having Gohan be the first to achieve it is an aspect that many fans latch on to because as kids watching the anime, there was a different kind of feeling watching a kid become the hero. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Super Saiyan 2, but there are a couple of forms that do it just a little better. And so if you've made it to this point, I'm sure you know what two forms are left: Super Saiyan and Super Saiyan God. So at number 2 is Super Saiyan. I know. How could the form that started it all be number 2? How could the form that came with an entire legendary backstory be number 2? How could the form that was introduced in the best saga be number 2? And how could the form that is associated with the best moment in the franchise be number 2? Well, because I truly believe that number 1 is responsible for the state of the fandom right now. I have to mention first that I'm a 2000s kid.
Can you say that's right? What do you want from me?
I did not experience Dragon Ball Z as it was happening, but by 2010, I had pretty much watched all of what Dragon Ball had to offer, and I loved the story. Everything about it captivated my young and wild imagination. So when I heard that the series was coming back with a new movie, you could only imagine my excitement. But for a long time, and I'm sure some of you can relate to this, I could not find the full movie anywhere. And I knew Goku achieved a new form, but I didn't know what it looked like. I kept seeing this picture everywhere, and as a young gullible kid, this is what I thought happened in the movie. But when I finally saw the film and saw this, I really can't put into words how that clip made me feel. Battle of Gods is my favorite Dragon Ball movie by far. The Super Saiyan God ritual, I loved it. The reveal of Pan, I loved it. A Super Saiyan with red hair that no one could sense, that was such a big deal at the time. And you can't argue that Super Saiyan God opened the door for how Dragon Ball forms are now, good and bad. I think it's easily a top 2 form in terms of influence, but its aesthetic is up there too, and I think the introduction is the best in the entire franchise. But that's just me. Those are my opinions, and I would love to read yours. So let me know in the comments how you rank the Saiyan transformations. It can be a top 5, a top 3, all of them, it doesn't matter. But with that being said, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for more videos like this. We are closing in on 5,000 subscribers, and man, I'm so grateful. So again, this is BigTune, and thanks for watching. Y'all have a good one.